Hello and welcome back to Learn the Bible in a Year for February 20th, 2026. February 20th is National Love Your Pet Day, because obviously, if you get a pet, you get them so that you can hate them. But today reminds us that we should probably love those little critters. Today, we're going to share this episode with our friend that we believe loves our pet more than they love us. Today, in our reading, we're reading about the priestly garments and altars, watching Jesus perform miracles and get rejected in his hometown, and exploring a Psalms about who can approach God. So let's dig in. So Moses is still on Mount Sinai getting detailed blueprints for the tabernacle. We've covered the ark, the table, the lampstand, and the structure itself. Now we're moving to the altar and the courtyard, and then to what the priests will wear when they minister. Chapter 27 describes a bronze altar where sacrifices will be offered. It's made of acacia wood overlaid with bronze. It's about 7.5 feet square and 4.5 feet high. It has horns on each corner and various utensils like pots and shovels and sprinkling bowls and meat forks and fire pans, all made out of bronze. And there is a courtyard surrounding the tabernacle, marked by curtains hanging on posts. The courtyard is where normal people could actually go. The tabernacle itself is more restricted. And the most holy place, or the Holy of Holies, is where the high priest can enter, but only once a year. Chapter 28 shifts to priestly garments, and this is where things get really detailed. God tells Moses to make sacred garments for Aaron and his sons, garments that give them dignity and honor. And these aren't just functional clothes, I mean, they are that, but they're also designed to reflect the glory of God. The high priest's garment includes an ephod, which is a vest like garment made out of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn with fine linen, and it has two onyx stones on the shoulder pieces with the names of the 12 tribes engraved on them. 6 tribes on each stone. So when Aaron goes before the Lord, he's literally carrying the names of all Israel on his shoulders. No pressure. And then there is the breastplate. And this is double folded to form a square, and it has 12 precious stones set in gold. Each stone represents one of the 12 tribes. And here's a question you might be asking. Why does God care so much about what the priest wears? Isn't this just sort of superficial? Well, here's the thing. These garments are teaching tools. They communicate that serving God is not something that we do casually. Approaching God's presence requires preparation, honor, and awareness of who you're representing. The high priest isn't just there for himself, he's there for all of Israel. Carrying their names on his shoulders and over his heart shows their repentive nature before God. And it's a visual reminder that priesthood is about mediation, standing between God and the people. For Christians nowadays, this might sound really, really odd because we're living in the time after Jesus has sacrificed himself for us, where we get to commune with God whenever we want. But it wasn't always that way. So we get to be really grateful for the time period that we live in. And then there's these two mysterious objects called the Urim and the Thummim. These are kept in the breastpiece, and we don't exactly know what these are. They're possibly stones used to discern God's will, kind of like sacred lots. The text doesn't explain how they worked, which is kind of frustrating for us, but apparently it wasn't important for the original audience. And finally, there is a plate of pure gold engraved with the words "Holy to the Lord" that is fastened to the front of the turban. It is constantly on Aaron's forehead, symbolizing that even people's offerings need to be sanctified. All right, moving into our reading from Mark chapter 5 and 6, Jesus has just cast out a legion of demons from a man in Gentile territory. And now he's crossing back over the lake to the Jewish side, and a large crowd gathers around him. A synagogue leader named Jairus comes and falls at Jesus' feet, pleading desperately. Now, this would have been a very odd sight because, after all, the synagogue leaders and Jesus tended to be kind of enemies, but Jairus is so desperate that he doesn't really care about this feud. His little daughter is dying, and he begs Jesus to come lay hands on her so that she will be healed and live. Jesus agrees and starts heading to the house. But the crowd is pressing in on Jesus from all sides, and in that crowd is a woman who's been bleeding for 12 years, and she spent all of her money on doctors, but she only got worse. According to Jewish law, her condition makes her ceremonially unclean, which means she couldn't be in a crowd at all, and definitely shouldn't be touching anyone. But she thinks to herself that if I can just touch Jesus' clothes, she'll be healed. So she reaches out and touches his cloak, and immediately the bleeding stops. She can feel it in her body that she is healed. Now, Jesus immediately knows that power has gone out from him. He stops and asks who touched him. Now, the disciples think this is kind of ridiculous. I mean, everybody is pressing in around him, but Jesus keeps looking around. The woman, realizing that she can't hide, comes forward, trembling, and falls at his feet. She tells him the whole truth. Now, here's a question you might have. Why does Jesus make a big deal out of this? I mean, she's healed, mission accomplished. Why embarrass her by making her confess publicly? Well, here's what actually is happening here. Jesus isn't trying to embarrass her at all. He's restoring her fully. Yes, she's physically healed, but she's also been socially isolated for 12 years. Now, by having her step forward and tell her story, Jesus is publicly declaring her as clean. She's not just healed in secret, she's restored to the community as a whole. And also, she touched Jesus thinking because she was unclean, that she would make Jesus unclean as well, that she would defile him. But instead, his cleanliness overcame her uncleanness. Jesus is showing that the power flows the other direction. Now, while Jesus is still speaking to her, messengers come from Jairus' house, and they say that your daughter is actually dead, so don't bother the teacher anymore. But Jesus tells Jairus not to be afraid, just believe. Then he takes Peter, James, and John and goes into the house. Now there's already a commotion, people crying and wailing loudly. Jesus asks what's all the noise about, saying that this child isn't dead, but just asleep. And they laugh at him. But Jesus doesn't find it all that funny. He sends everybody out of the house, takes the parents and his three disciples, and goes to where the child is. He takes her hand and tells her to get up, and immediately she stands up and walks around. She's 12 years old, which is the same number of years the other woman has been sick. There's some connection there. Then Jesus tells everybody in the room not to share this with anybody. Well, that's kind of weird. Why does Jesus keep telling people not to tell anyone? I mean, they're going to tell everyone anyway, so what's the big deal? This is called the messianic secret in Mark's gospel. Jesus does not want to be known just as a miracle worker. He doesn't want people following him for the wrong reasons or forcing him into a political role as a revolutionary leader. He's trying to control the narrative about who he is and what he came to do. Of course, people can't keep quiet, which is understandable, but Jesus here is trying to prevent a premature climax of his ministry. Then chapter 6 opens with Jesus going to his hometown of Nazareth. He teaches in the synagogue, and the people are amazed but also offended. They ask where he got this wisdom and these powers. They say, isn't this just the carpenter's son, Mary's son, the brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon? They know his family. They've watched him grow up, and they can't reconcile the ordinary Jesus they knew with the alternative Jesus that's standing before them now. Mark says that Jesus could not do many miracles there because of their lack of faith, and that he was amazed at their unbelief. What? A question you might be asking yourself is Jesus couldn't do miracles? I thought he was all powerful. But here's the nuance here. It's not that Jesus lacked the power, it's that performing miracles for people who had already decided that he was just a local carpenter's kid would accomplish nothing. Faith isn't a requirement for Jesus' power. I mean, he's healed plenty of people who didn't have any faith, but faith is required for people to receive what Jesus offers. And their hearts were closed. Jesus isn't a performer doing tricks to convince skeptics. He's offering the kingdom to those who will receive it. And in his hometown, they were unwilling to receive it. And we finished up today in Psalms chapter 24. This is a processional psalm, probably sung when the Ark of the Covenant was being carried to the temple. It starts with a universal declaration and ends with a dramatic entrance. The psalm opens by declaring that the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The world and all who live in it belong to God because he founded it and established it. This is challenging any claim that the land belongs to Israel or that other gods have any jurisdiction. Nope, everything belongs to the God of Israel. Then it asks a crucial question. Who may ascend the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? The answer, those who have clean hands and a pure heart, those who don't worship idols or swear falsely. These are the people who can receive blessing from the Lord. And a question you might have is, well, doesn't this contradict grace? Isn't it saying that you have to be good enough to approach God? Well, the answer here is yes and no. The psalm is highlighting the standard: God is holy and requires holiness. The problem is that none of us meet that standard ever, literally never. This creates tension that will eventually resolve itself in Jesus, the one who has clean hands and a pure heart that makes a way for us to approach God despite our lack of holiness. So, is this performative? Well, yeah, absolutely. The performance requirement is incredibly high, so high that we can never, ever hope to accomplish it. But Jesus accomplished it for us. So make no mistake, this Psalms is correct in outlining the standard that God has. It just so happens that Jesus is the only one that lived up to that standard on our behalf. Alrighty, this episode has been brought to you today by Covenant Security Equipment, which is a Christian owned company that partners with building contractors who build with safety in mind. They sell bullet resistant windows and secure transaction systems and drive through installations and much, much more. Go to covenantsecurityequipment.com if this is of interest to you. And also, don't forget to pick up a copy of the Learn the Bible in a Year workbook. I wrote this book for you who are listening to the podcast. It provides you with additional questions and fun facts about the daily readings. The digital version of this book is 100% for free. The paperback version is not free because turns out paper costs money. You can pick up either one of those versions. The link to those is in the show notes, so make sure you check that out. What was your main takeaway from today? My main takeaway was what he did with this woman who had been bleeding for 12 years. Yes, he healed her, but he didn't just heal her, he pronounces her as clean in front of everybody. And that's a good reminder for all of us. When we are saved, Jesus doesn't come in and save us and then take off and leave us alone to fight with everything that we're worth. No, he comes in and saves us and then walks with us for the rest of our lives. And he's going to be with us for all of eternity as well. He's not a God that comes in one and done. He's with us every step of the way, just like how he helped this woman heal her and then mark her as clean forever. What a great story. All right, well, that is the end of the recap for today, and I will see all of you cool cats again here tomorrow.